Get comfortable with English and Comfort Zone. This is your English listening practice podcast to help you learn and improve naturally.
How can you remember new English words easily when there are so many to learn? Maybe you try to memorize lists but forget them the next day, or perhaps you feel overwhelmed by all the vocabulary in books and shows. That's a common struggle, but here's the good news. Remembering new words can actually be fun and effective if you do it the right way.
I'm Oriana, by the way.
And I'm Ken. This is English in Comfort Zone, the place where you can learn English while you relax, lie down, or even while you sleep. No pressure, no stress, just natural English and interesting topics.
Today, we'll share practical ways to remember new English words step by step with examples you can try right now. So, if you've ever wondered how to actually expand your vocabulary without boring flashcards, this is for you. Stick with us, we'll make it simple, fun, and something you can start using right away.
Let's get started.
Let's start with a method that is simple but really powerful visualization. Our brains remember images much better than plain words or sounds.
Yeah, and before you say that sounds complicated, just hear us out. A lot of learners feel frustrated because they read or hear new words but can't remember them later. But when you create mental pictures, your brain forms stronger connections.
Right. No textbook, no pressure, just your imagination. And the best way to start is to make the images really unusual or funny.
For example, if you're learning the word exhausted, don't just repeat the definition. Instead, picture yourself with extremely heavy weights on your shoulders, dragging your feet with exaggerated dark circles under your eyes. The more dramatic the image, the better you'll remember it.
That's a good point. When we try to remember words, just repeating definitions doesn't work well. Our brains need emotion and exaggeration to really store information.
And here's something fun, you can also connect new words to things you already know well. Like if you're learning the word transparent, think of your favorite clear glass or water bottle with a funny face drawn on it saying, "You can see right through me."
That way, you're not just learning isolated words, you're building on knowledge you already have. That's how our brains naturally work best.
Exactly. Now, let's move on to another powerful technique, creating personal sentences with new words.
This is one of my favorites because it makes vocabulary immediately useful. When you learn a new word, don't just memorize its definition. Create a sentence that relates to your own life.
Yes, personal connection is key. For example, if you learn the word postpone, don't just remember it means to delay something. Make a sentence like, "I had to postpone my dentist appointment because I got sick yesterday."
Making it personal creates an emotional connection, and emotions strengthen memory. So if you learn magnificent, don't just think very beautiful. Create a sentence like the sunset at my favorite beach was magnificent last summer.
And don't worry about making perfect sentences at first. Just focus on making them meaningful to you. Even a simple sentence like, "My dog is enthusiastic about walks," is perfect if it helps you remember the word enthusiastic.
You can write these personal sentences down in a notebook or even in your phone. Review them regularly, and soon the words will become part of your active vocabulary.
That's right. And it's much easier to remember words this way than from random examples in a textbook because your brain thinks, "Oh, this is about me, so it must be important."
Now, let's talk about a method that works with how our brains naturally organize information, learning words in categories or groups.
Instead of trying to learn random vocabulary from a list, group related words together. Our brains love patterns and connections, and this approach takes advantage of that.
For example, if you're interested in cooking, learn kitchen words together: stove, oven, spatula, whisk, simmer, boil, bake. When words are connected by a theme, they support each other in your memory.
Exactly. If you remember stove, it might help you remember oven and microwave too, because they're all connected in your mind.
And you should choose categories that interest you personally. If you love sports, learn sports vocabulary. If you're interested in business, focus on business terms. When you care about the topic, you'll remember the words better.
You can create your own mind maps or word webs with a main concept in the center and related words branching out. For example, put weather in the middle, then add branches for different types: rainy, sunny, cloudy, foggy, stormy.
I like to add visual elements to my word maps too, little drawings or symbols that help me remember the connections. For weather, maybe a little sun icon next to sunny or raindrops next to rainy.
That's a great idea. It combines two powerful memory techniques, categorization and visualization. Now, let's move on to another technique that many learners don't use enough of: speaking out loud.
Yes. When you learn a new word, don't just read it silently, say it out loud several times. This engages more parts of your brain and creates stronger memory connections.
When you say a word out loud, you're using multiple senses. You see the word, you hear the word, and you feel your mouth making the sounds. This creates more neural pathways in your brain, which makes the memory stronger.
This might feel a bit strange at first, especially if you're alone, but it really works. Your mouth needs to practice making the sounds, and your ears need to hear the word. Try saying the word slowly at first, then at normal speed.
And don't stop at just saying the word by itself. Put it in a sentence and say the whole sentence out loud. This soup is delicious. I'm curious about that book. Using the word in context helps your brain understand how it works in real conversation.
Speaking out loud also helps you catch pronunciation problems you might miss when reading silently. If a word feels difficult to say, that's a sign you need more practice with it.
I like to pretend I'm having a conversation or teaching someone else. For example, I might say out loud, "Let me explain what compromise means." A compromise is when each person gives up something to reach an agreement. For example, if my friend wants to eat pizza and I want to eat sushi, we might compromise by going to a food court where we can each get what we want.
That's a great approach. You're not just practicing the word itself, but also how to use it in natural speech. This prepares you for real conversations.
And if you're worried about people hearing you, you can practice in private, like in your room or even in the shower. The important thing is to actually make the sounds, not just think them in your head.
Here's another powerful technique: using spaced repetition instead of cramming. Many learners try to memorize lots of words in one long study session, but research shows this isn't effective for long term memory.
Exactly. Our brains don't work well with cramming. Instead, we need to review information at increasing intervals, what experts call spaced repetition.
Here's how it works: when you learn a new word, review it after 1 day, then after 3 days, then after a week, then after 2 weeks, and so on. Each time you remember the word correctly, you can wait longer before reviewing it again.
This sends a message to your brain that this information is important because it keeps coming up at different times. It's much more effective than studying a word 10 times in one day and then never seeing it again.
There are apps and digital flashcards that can handle this scheduling automatically. They show you words just when you're about to forget them, which is the perfect time to strengthen the memory.
But you don't need technology to use this method. You can create your own simple system with index cards or a notebook. When you learn a new word, write it on a card with its meaning and an example sentence. Review new cards daily, then move them to different piles based on how well you know them.
Words you know well might only need review once a month, while difficult words might need review every few days. By spacing out your reviews, you'll remember more words with less total study time.
Let's talk about another powerful method: learning through real context instead of word lists. When you see a new word in a real situation, in a conversation, a song, or a TV show, your brain has more information to connect with the word.
Yes, context is super important. For example, if you learn the word stunning from a list, you might forget it quickly. But if you hear someone say, that sunset is absolutely stunning, while looking at a beautiful sunset, you'll have a real experience connected to the word.
Our brains are designed to learn language in context, not as isolated pieces of information. That's how we all learned our first language, by hearing words used in real situations, not by memorizing vocabulary lists.
Try to notice new words and things you enjoy, your favorite shows, songs, or books. When you learn words from contexts you care about, they become part of your emotional memory, which is very strong.
When you find a new word in something you're reading or watching, pause and notice how it's used. What words come before and after it? Is it used in a positive or negative way? This information helps you understand not just what the word means, but how to use it correctly.
And here's something many learners don't realize: you need to actually use new words, not just recognize them. It's much easier to understand a word when you see or hear it than to use it in your own speaking or writing.
This is so true. To really remember a word, you need to make it active vocabulary, not just passive. Try to use new words in conversations, even if it feels a bit uncomfortable at first.
If you don't have anyone to practice with, try the methods we talked about earlier. Speak out loud to yourself. Write sentences using the new words, or even record yourself using new vocabulary.
Here's a fun activity. Choose 3 to 5 new words every week that you want to use actively. Write them on sticky notes and put them where you'll see them often: on your mirror, your computer, or your phone. Challenge yourself to use each word at least once every day.
I like to set a reminder on my phone that asks, have you used your new words today? This helps me remember to actually practice them, not just read them.
Another effective technique is connecting words to physical movements or locations. This is called the memory palace or method of loci technique, and it's used by memory champions around the world.
It sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple. Imagine walking through your home. Place new words at different locations. For example, the word commence, which means begin, might be at your front door, since that's where you begin entering your home.
Or the word sizzle might be in your kitchen, where you can imagine hearing and seeing food sizzling in a pan. When you want to remember these words, just take a mental walk through your home.
Our brains are amazing at remembering locations and physical spaces. By connecting words to places, you use this natural ability to boost your vocabulary memory.
You can also connect words to physical movements. For example, for the word stretch, you could actually stretch your arms above your head. For crouch, you could bend down low. These physical connections create strong memory links.
This technique has actually been used for thousands of years, even before people had books or computers. Ancient speakers would remember entire speeches by connecting different parts to locations in a building they knew well.
Let's talk about one more powerful technique: teaching what you learn. When you explain a new word to someone else, even if they're just imaginary, you have to organize the information clearly in your own mind.
This works amazingly well because teaching forces you to recall the word, its meaning, its pronunciation, and how to use it in context. It's like giving your brain a full workout with that word.
You don't need an actual student, and you can pretend to teach a friend, write a simple explanation in a journal, or even explain the word to your pet. The important thing is formulating a clear explanation.
I sometimes record videos where I explain new English words I've learned, even if I never share these videos with anyone. Just the act of explaining helps cement the words in my memory.
This technique also helps you identify gaps in your understanding. If you can't explain a word clearly, that's a sign you need to learn more about how it's used.
Now, let's talk about a practical approach that combines many of these techniques, creating word stories.
Word stories are short, memorable narratives that include several new words you want to learn. By connecting words in a story, you create multiple memory links between them.
For example, let's say you want to remember four words: hesitate, massive, approach, and remarkable. You could create a story like, I didn't hesitate to approach the massive mountain. The view from the top was truly remarkable.
The story doesn't have to be long or complicated. Just a sentence or two is enough. The important thing is that it connects the words in a meaningful way that's easy to visualize.
And if you combine this with the visualization technique we talked about earlier, you can create mental images for your story, making it even more memorable.
Another practical technique is using word associations. Connect new words to words you already know, either by meaning, sound, or just a personal connection.
For example, if you're learning the word diligent, which means hardworking, you might connect it to intelligent because they sound similar and often go together. Diligent students are often intelligent.
Or if you're learning meticulous, meaning very careful about details, you might connect it to microscope because both involve looking closely at small details.
These associations can be personal too. Maybe a word reminds you of a friend, a movie character, or a place you've been. Any connection that helps you remember is a good one.
Let's also talk about the importance of review and repetition. No matter which techniques you use, you need to review new words regularly for them to stay in your memory.
Yes, repetition is key to long term memory. But repetition doesn't mean just saying the word over and over. It means encountering the word in different contexts and using different techniques to engage with it.
For example, you might learn a new word from a movie, then use it in a sentence of your own, then teach it to someone else, then include it in a word story. Each different type of interaction strengthens the memory in a different way.
And remember, forgetting is a normal part of the learning process. If you forget a word, don't get discouraged. Just relearn it, and it will actually form a stronger memory the second time around.
That's right. Each time you remember something after forgetting it, the memory becomes stronger. This is called the spacing effect, and it's a powerful principle in learning.
So, to summarize what we've covered today, visualize words in funny or unusual ways, create personal sentences, learn words in category groups, speak out loud, use spaced repetition, learn through context, actively use new words, connect words to physical locations, teach what you learn, create word stories, and use associations.
Remember, the key is consistency. You don't need to use all these methods at once. Pick one or two that sound interesting and try them for a week. See which ones work best for you, then add more as they become habits.
Vocabulary building takes time, so be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories, like when you successfully use a new word in conversation or when you remember a word you learned last month.
That's right. Learning a language is a journey, not a race. These techniques will help you build a stronger, more usable vocabulary over time, which will make all aspects of your English more natural and comfortable.
Before we go, let's review some key words from today's episode.
Visualization, creating mental pictures to help remember things. Example, visualization helped me remember difficult words by creating funny images in my mind.
Context, the situation or text surrounding a word that helps explain its meaning. Example, learning words in context is more effective than memorizing word lists.
Interval, a period of time between events. Example, using increasing intervals between reviews helps words stay in your long-term memory.
Active vocabulary, or words you can use when speaking or writing, not just understand when hearing or reading. Example, to improve your speaking, focus on building your active vocabulary.
Method of loci, a memory technique using locations to remember information. Example, the method of LOSA helps you remember words by placing them in familiar locations in your mind.
Association. Connecting a new word with something you already know. Example. Creating associations between new and familiar words helps strengthen your memory.
Spaced repetition, a learning technique where review sessions are spaced out over time. Example, spaced repetition is more effective than cramming all your vocabulary practice into one day.
Cramming. Trying to learn a lot of information in a short period of time. Example. Cramming the night before a test doesn't help with long term memory.
Neural pathways, connections between brain cells that form when we learn. Example, speaking out loud creates stronger neural pathways than just reading silently.
Emotional memory. Memories connected to feelings, which are often stronger than other memories. Example. When you learn words from contexts you care about, they become part of your emotional memory.
That's all for today's episode of English in Comfort Zone. Remember, learning happens most effectively when you're relaxed and enjoying the process.
Join us next time when we'll talk about how to improve your English listening skills. Until then, keep practicing, stay consistent, and be kind to yourself on your language journey.
Thanks for listening and see you next time.